Today, we are taking a look at the Mig Switch that I was absolutely shocked showed up at my doorstep last week. I had ordered it at the end of last year, and it had been radio silence for months up until it just randomly arrived. Now, I am still missing part of the equation here, as I don't have the Mig Switch dumper, but the cartridge will at least allow us to try this thing out and cycle through different games and see how the whole process works of backing up your cartridges a different way. Well, we'll see how all that goes. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and we're going to start today with this video's sponsor. A big thank you to Keeper Security for sponsoring today's video. Keeper is trusted by thousands of organizations and millions of individuals across more than 100 countries, best known for their password management as the most secure, certified, and tested security platform. Their password manager comes in a variety of different plans for individuals, families, and businesses. Easily create and store passwords in a secure password vault, and just remember your master password to have all of your passwords at your fingertips. Access your personal vault from any device and autofill passwords into apps and websites for instant logins. You can access your Keeper vault even when offline and set up emergency access so certain designated people can access your vault in the case of an emergency. Breach Watch keeps an eye out for any of your passwords showing up on the dark web, instantly alerting you so you can take action right away, giving you peace of mind. Click the link in the description below to save 50% on a Keeper Unlimited plan or 30% off a Keeper Business plan. Thanks again to Keeper Security for sponsoring today's video. So to start, the launch of the Mig Switch was an absolute disaster, and it continues to still be an issue now where people are trying to figure out what their order status is and if they're even getting this thing. So when mine showed up, and I ordered mine from modded hardware, and I'm sure it's going to be different for everyone depending on where exactly they decided to buy this thing from, I was genuinely surprised. So, all right, let's take a look, see what we have here with the Mig Switch. I am missing one part of it, though, which I'll get into here a little later. For now, let's unbox it, and it's a pretty quick unboxing. They didn't exactly go all out. It's very minimalistic, where we have the Mig Switch at the front here. Make a change and join the revolution feels very, very dramatic for a flash cart, but marketing's like half the battle, right? Anyway, we open it up fighting with a small piece of tape on the front, and then we have our cartridge right in front of us, which, comparing it to a regular Switch cartridge, it's, as you would expect, the same size, since it has to fit in the cartridge slot. Obviously, the only difference is we have an SD card slot on the front, and the sticker is maybe a little glossier. Even on the back, where you have the pins, lines up perfectly fine. In fact, it'd be kind of difficult to be able to pick this out of a lineup of a bunch of Switch games if you just kind of laid them out on the table when it's flipped over like this. So now we have to talk about actually backing up our games, because we're missing the Mig Switch dumper, and originally this was part of the package. You would get the cartridge and then the way, that being the dumper, to dump your games and back them up, which would then allow you to put them on an SD card so that you can have this one Mig Switch cartridge represent a significant portion or maybe your entire Switch library. But something seemed to go wrong during, I guess, processing or shipping or putting everything together, and they decided to separate the Mig Switch cartridge and the dumper, which basically leaves us with one option. We have to improvise and use a hacked Switch system. Yes, you can go that route to back up your games, and that's basically what we're gonna have to do here. I have this Switch that unfortunately doesn't charge correctly. I think it's the charge IC on the board. I haven't gotten around to fixing it, but it will stay on perfectly fine when plugged in, and I went ahead, pushed a payload, kicked it over so that it does have a custom firmware, which will let me load up the program that they have on their website. So there, they've provided this Mig Switch dumper NRO file that we can launch here, and you'll see immediately we have a couple of options. We have easy one-click dump, we have output storage, and advanced options. Under advanced options, you can pick what you want to back up from the cartridge, and if you're going to be trying to do this, as they say, in online mode, quote unquote, you're going to want to back up everything that includes unique certificates. Otherwise, well, Nintendo can probably see that multiple copies of the same game are being used if they're all connected to the internet, and then I assume people start getting banned. As for output storage, it's exactly how it sounds. It lets you pick where you would like to send these files, whether it's on an SD card, or they have PC mode, which seems to be a way for you to have your Switch plugged into your PC and just act exactly like that Mig Switch dumper, where it'll just send the files to your PC, and then you can move them over to an SD card at that time. I decided to use a 256 gigabyte gigabyte SD card here and just started backing up and dumping a bunch of random games here that I have for the Switch. And it would take varying amounts of time from like 2 or 3 minutes up to 10, even 15 minutes for larger games. So I just kind of left it here off on its own, filling up this red bar over and over and over again until I had 4 full games backed up, which I took that SD card, popped it into my PC, and I found 4 different folders here. And yeah, they have several files in each one. And to my understanding, all I have to do is move these folders over onto the Mig Switch cartridge with an SD card. So I loaded up a 128 gigabyte standard SD card here and move those folders over. You also want to update the firmware on this card. So on their website, they do provide that file. And the way this works is you drop it onto the root of the SD card and you take the Mig Switch cartridge, pop it into the cartridge slot on your Switch that will then provide power and essentially boot up this Mig Switch cartridge. You'll see the blue light on the top flash, and then it's done. Like the cartridge is completely updated, at which point you take it out of the system, then you drop it back in, and you should be able to start playing your games. Which, as soon as I reinserted that cartridge, I had Wild Guns pop up immediately, which then I guess was the first game on the list for it to load. Removing the cartridge and then dropping it back in loaded the next game, and then the next one. And as I was able to do that, to have all 4 of the games represented here on this home screen for this Switch OLED, which has not been used at all. It's completely stock. I picked it up for a future project that I won't really care if, say, it gets banned or something here. Not that I'm really expecting it to, but it seemed to populate the front dashboard here perfectly fine with all these different games. And I was able to cycle through them, but I did notice it wasn't as straightforward and smooth as I would like. So there were a few times where I had to pop the cartridge in 2 or 3 times for it to kick over to the next game. And I don't know if it's maybe having a hard time switching over with the Mig Switch or even the Switch itself recognizing the game. It was just something that I did notice as I was trying to cycle through, which does make it a bit of a chore even to maybe go 10 or 15 or 20 games in if you have a bunch of things that are backed up. That said, when I did have the game I wanted selected, yeah, it worked fine. It played exactly as you would expect, as if the game was in that cartridge slot. And that's the entire idea here, is we're essentially cloning or mirroring the entire cartridge with the unique identifiers. We're putting it on this SD card, and we're tricking the Switch into thinking it's there, and it acts exactly as it should then. The only issue I have right now necessarily with this is I'm very unclear as to how this will be going forward with Nintendo. At this time, it seems that they've been able to get around it getting banned if you go the entire route of backing up everything off of that cartridge. In fact, I was able to completely update these games, which it'll technically update the game without the cartridge in the slot. So all these titles I had on the dashboard here, they would update even with the Mig Switch out, which is fine. And then I was able to jump in completely fine when I dropped the cartridge back in. But I still have questions of the online mode, and that being you play online with your Mig Switch cartridge. I am still kind of uneasy at the idea of that. And it's, again, it seems like it's fine now, but I do wonder of the future where Nintendo maybe catches on and they figure out a way to detect this. Now, I do want to point out, it is completely possible that Nintendo never figures it out, and this is like the premium solution that is undetectable, and you're just good to go. You can back up all of your physical games. I do wonder, though, about maybe the potential for people renting games, dumping them, sending them back, and it gets passed around that way, and people just unknowingly get banned because they're using a game that's already been copied. That is very possible. It can happen in probably some rare cases, because I don't necessarily think the Mig Switch at this time is going to be widespread. I'm showing you how you would use a hacked Switch to back up the game. My thing with that right now is, with there being no dumper that's freely available, I don't know why you wouldn't just play these games on the hacked Switch. I guess you could say, well, I can't play online with it, and sure, that's correct, but it just seems like I'm doing extra steps to put it on a cartridge that I'm not 100% sure how undetectable it really is online anyway. And I'm seeing people currently on different forums talk about how they just don't connect to the internet at all just to avoid that. Well, if you're already using a hacked Switch, then to back the stuff up, that's actually a pretty good avenue to play it as well. That said, when the Mig Switch dumper starts getting out there and it's something maybe that can be paired with this cartridge, then actually it would be a pretty cool device to have. I mean, the idea of backing up your own games specifically, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, and technically in that regard would play against the idea of piracy. But I am noticing that some people are already sharing files that they're dumping off of their cartridges, not the unique identifiers, because they have something called offline mode, which is you loading up the more common files on your Mig Switch, and they basically tell you, hey, don't go online because this probably will get you banned. Oh, and I think the idea of having to cycle through games by popping the cartridge in and out over and over again is just not very intuitive, and it's not very convenient. I think it'd be cool if they put a button on the top so that you could just press it and it really breaks the connection that way to the system, so you don't have to wear out the pins. And again, it was kind of spotty as I was trying to cycle through these titles, and if you go past one, you can't necessarily go backwards, so you have to go all the way back around the horn to then get to your game. Maybe it'd be a good idea to have two buttons, so it's almost like a left or right, so you scroll through that way. Maybe they can put a little LCD screen on there, and okay, maybe now I'm just over-engineering the whole thing. And I figured while we're here, we can open up the cartridge, take a look inside. I saw some early samples had the top of the different chips inside scratched off. Others were legible, so we'll take a look here. There's one screw at the top, and then the front casing is slotted in, which you just kind of lift that up, and then we can see two chips inside. So one of these appears to be the FPGA that is working essentially to trick the Switch into seeing it as a full-on game cartridge and then route to that SD card that we use as our storage for our games. This is an ICE 40 based on the designation on the top of the chip. The one next to that appears to be, I assume, just a cheaper MCU or just a microcontroller they were able to get, because the ESP32, most times when you look this up, is an MCU that's used for, say, a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth configuration. I assume it was just easy for them to get. They could drop it here and it would get the job done for basic management when it comes to the SD card and the FPGA, all working together to make your Switch think you have an actual game cartridge in there. And so that is the Mig Switch. There's still this risk that's just out there, the possibility that Nintendo catches on to this and pushes a patch or a system firmware update, and then all of a sudden, oh wait, it doesn't work anymore, or worse, the system's able to detect if you're using this cartridge and then ban your console outright. So I can't necessarily guarantee that that won't happen in the future, and because of all this and the way it's sort of marketed as being used on a stock system and even online, it's not really something I can recommend currently. But hey, if you want to get it for a secondary Switch that's always going to be offline, and you don't necessarily want to go through the process of just getting a hacked Switch for that purpose, technically it does what it's supposed to do. It plays games that you yourself back up in cartridge form. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.